This is Damian Macy of the Friends of the Marshall Public Library in our Oral History Project. Today is Monday, December the 7th, and I am visiting with Bonnie White in Casey at her lovely home on, what is the address here, Bonnie?
303 Northwest 1st.
At 303 Northwest 1st Street. And I think everyone has a story, and Bonnie's already told me a few things that I hope she covers in this interview. And we're really looking forward to hearing from her. And with that, I'll introduce you to Bonnie. You're on.
There's a bowling farm north of Martinsville. It's a half a mile east of where the Dutch kitchen used to be. And my sister March and I were born there. Dad was the tool dresser at the oil well that Bolins were having drilled on their property, their first oil well. And he farmed and worked evenings as a tool dresser, a very heavy, hard job. They'd pull the drilling, whatever it was, and when it was knocking its way through limestone, it got awfully dull. Part of the time it could drill through gravel and dirt. It wasn't damaged so much, but it had to be pulled and taken to anvil and pounded back to have a cutting blade.
So, you know approximately what year that might have been?
Well, yeah, 21.
1921, okay.
And when the oil came
Excuse me.
in, it was a successful well. He then went to Auburn and opened a blacksmith shop of his own. So my first very active memories were living in the big town of Auburn. It was a good-sized village. Then it had a good grocery store, a good dry goods store. Veach's had dry goods, and what all? Shade's Garage.
Oh, yeah.
Then, of course, that was before semis and gasoline trucks. So everything came on a train. And Como, Murphy, and Clara had the grocery store, and the half a mile north at Aidenmore was the train station. And those people were named Murphy also. I don't know if the two men were cousins or what, but anyway, both names were Murphy. And you can imagine what a busy place that Aidenmore was. It had a tremendously large, sturdy building for the freight, and the Murphys had a good-sized house that they lived in. But any number of things came in from the blacksmith shop.
Oh, man.
Heavy stuff. And we had to go up in a wagon to get it. Of course, I just rode along. I was 2, 3 years old. But also, Worlds of Things was picked up from the grocery store and taken, they said, to Chicago. Rabbits. Lots of rabbits.
Oh, man.
Lots of chickens. eggs, anything in the way of food that people might need on up the line, it got put on the train.
Do you know how, how those were prepared for shipment?
Well, I've been trying to think. I wonder if that man he suspended them on the clothesline out back. I'm wondering if he did split them open and take the guts out.
I would imagine.
But now, they would have had, I started to say, to be packed in ice, but probably not. Probably they were just salted like the dickens. That's the way people used to keep stuff.
Somewhere in there were some ice cars. They called them refrigerated, but they would just put ice in them to keep things cold. That's what I wondered if they used that.
But anyway, people came in the store. They'd go out certain days. Rabbits would be picked up. And these people would go out and hunt rabbits. There were lots of rabbits. Really. There were lots of rabbits then. And they'd bring them in the store and sell them to the storekeeper, see? Then he'd ship them on.
Did they sell the rabbit fur or the rabbit skins separately from the carcasses? Or
this is something that I've wondered. I feel like this man probably just split them and took the guts out and salted them, maybe.
Set them on.
Yeah.
Because the fur is so soft and all that some people did make things out of.
Well, yeah, rabbit fur is something that people made shoes, house shoes, and a lot of things out of. Well, it's not been too long, but what rabbit fur was fur collar for
decorative,
a lot of coats. So we lived, the grocery, Mrs. Reeser, Mr. Cunningham, then the next house was ours. That many houses from the grocery store. So my nieces and nephews think this is a wild story. Mom put a nickel in my hand and said, "Go up and get a loaf of bread." And I went up there, went in the store, and here was a man up there with Mr. Murphy, and he was fur all over. He had rabbits buttoned here, Too many to carry, so he just hits them to his buttons. And scared me. I'd never seen people.
Be like a walking rabbit, wouldn't it?
Here was an empty barrel. Of course, I was just 3 years old. We moved away soon after that. So here's an empty barrel and a chair. I get up on the chair and get in that barrel. And there's a hole. So I could look out to see when that scary man left. And as soon as he left, I stood up, ready to get my bread.
I assume the barrel was empty, though, right?
It must have been. I don't think I would have stepped on anything. Evidently, it had crackers or something in it. But anyway, I couldn't get out.
Yeah, they're pretty high.
Well, I was just a little kid. So I started bawling. So Como came over there and looked down and, "Well, what are you doing in there?" He lifted me out.
You were rescued then.
So I went home bawling. without the bread. I think Mom sent Delbert. He was he was grade school age. I think he went back up and got the loaf of bread.
Did you still have the nickel?
Well, yeah, I wonder, did I lose the nickel or not? I can't remember that part of it. But bread then was not sliced.
Yeah, right.
And it didn't start being sliced for 6 or 7 years. And some of it, the storekeeper would buy a bread slicer, and he'd unwrap it and slice it for people and wrap it back up.
When you talk about the grocery store, was that purely groceries, or was it kind of a general store that had about everything?
That store was groceries.
Just groceries.
Yes. The general store was on the north side of the road. Veach's owned it. And my sister, Hazel, my oldest sister, worked there, sold yard goods and so on for Veach's store.
And that kind of store, you could just buy just about anything you needed.
They had a lot of stuff and general merchandise of all kinds. But the yard goods was a big thing because people sewed all of their own clothes in, even their shirts.
Did they have any ready-made clothes there or no?
No, I don't think you could buy ready-made clothes. I think you had to have a tailor make if you wanted specially made clothes.
What was your biggest vivid memory about the general store? I mean, the way it was arranged?
Seeing her measure out yard goods for people, and she brought stuff home and sewed dresses for us little girls. And I just thought it was a wonderful place, mainly because she worked there, I guess.
I think of early years, my grandfather always referred to going to town to trade. And I know he was going to buy, but at one time, it really was trading, and people would bring in their eggs and chickens and stuff. Did they have that much in the way of, I guess you barter, of bringing things in and trading for groceries?
Well, of course, the grocery store probably did have. People brought in eggs, and rabbits, chickens. But Veach's, I think, was cash store.
Strictly the hardcore cash store.
Yeah, I think it was.
Did they have a system of credit? So in other words, if you didn't have the money today,
I don't know.
Did they have a book where they would record it and then you paid for it when you got your paycheck?
I suppose they did have, but we didn't use it. Well, I'm sure they would have had.
At that time, there was not any gas stations. Or did they have a gas pump in front?
Well,
later?
I don't think so. The first car I remember seeing there was my oldest brother's Model T. He bought a new Model T. He got married when we lived there, and Mrs. Reeser died, I suppose, because they lived in her house. And I think his car was the first car I remember seeing in town.
Oh, but I know what color it was too, right?
Black, of course. And a rumble seat.
A rumble seat. I'll be. Was that quite a thrill and an experience to get in that thing?
Well, they would take me to Sunday school Sunday morning in it. I thought it was 2 or 3 blocks.
But that was special, I'll bet.
There was, when Hazel first started working at Beaches, of course she was Mom's prize babysitter.
Oh, my.
This is Hazel, before my time. This is Pete, Gilbert Chapman, Delbert, Marie Hudson.
Okay.
She's the youngest one in this picture. So she, being the oldest girl, she's stuck with the world of baby care. And
How about this little one? This little one right here that she's holding.
well, that's Herbert Chapman.
Okay.
Did you ever hear of him?
Uh-huh.
One time, Dad came home from the blacksmith shop, and I'm sure it must have been when Hazel first started working for Beaches, because she wouldn't have been there to babysit. Mom said to Dad, "I wish you'd take care of these kids for me a while. I can't get anything done."
Oh.
So he gets us on his knee and gets in the rocking chair, and he rocks and he sings. He sings every song in the Methodist songbook. And, oh, we were thrilled. We were just to be rocked and sung to.
Oh, my. That'd be special.
That attention. I never forgot how wonderful it was.
Did he sing in the church choir?
Well, no, but I think he always sang. His dad, they tell me, taught voice some. I'm not sure of the details, but his dad's brother, now the name escapes me, had lived at Darien when Darien was a village. At one time it was a good-sized village. And he helped build he helped form a church, and then later it went into the St. Paul Church. And he helped organize it and helped burn the brick that built the building.
I have some family or relatives buried in the St. Paul Cemetery.
Yeah, they're still burying people there. And after maybe 15, 16 years there, he went down to closer to his brothers and helped build the Wesley Chapel Church.
Oh, yeah.
And was superintendent there for a long time. So he's buried there. That Wesley Chapel Cemetery is full of Chapmans.
You mentioned going to church. Was that to the church there in
At Auburn.
Auburn,
a Methodist church here in Auburn.
Okay.
And quite a lively, active church. Had a lot of devoted people that
I'm sure.
went there.
Is there anything you remember about the inside of the church or the interior?
The thing I remember is not so much the building, but we used to sit behind Sam Morgan, and Sam Morgan was shiny bald, and he was a great singer. I mean, he sang with
Exuberance.
all of his being, and the sunshine would come in the window, and form a spot of light on the back of his shiny head. And I would just sit there, watch that light dance around. He sang. I often thought, he sang with all of his heart and soul.
That's great. Did they have someone play the piano for the singing, or did they do it without?
Was there a piano or an organ?
It might have been a pump organ.
I imagine it. I can't remember.
Okay.
I was too little. But I think there might have been an organ, a pump organ.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know who played it.
Well, I know there was I think a 2-room school at one time in downtown Auburn.
Oh, yeah.
Is that where you went to school?
No, I wasn't old enough to go to school there. My older brothers and sisters did. Yeah, the first 4 grades was in one room, and the next 4 was in the big room.
And I remember that school quite vividly myself. But
Ray Berkebile taught there.
Yeah, I knew Ray. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember things about Auburn that maybe are no longer there?
Well, you see, I was when I was 4, we were living in the country on another place. Let's see, Capshade Place, and then by the time I started school, we lived, can't think of the people's names, but we lived west of Freedom School.
Okay.
And we walked, Marie, Herbert, and me, walked to Freedom School. And we had to cross a creek, which wasn't bad in the warm weather. After you started to wear shoes, there was a problem. And Dad cut a tree and flattened one side of it, made a footlog, which worked fine until the creek flooded. My brother and sister were older, and they just ran across that footlog for fun. And I was scared of that high water. And I stood there and bawled. I was afraid to go across on the footlog.
Did some of them come back to help you across?
No, they just stood over there and berated me now.
Oh, my.
Get over here, you know. I sat down and scooted across.
That could be a little hard on the
Run
parts
my
of the anatomy.
clothes when I got home. Mom was very cross because I'd ruined my clothes.
Oh, my goodness. One of those old rough logs would do
But I
that.
was afraid of that at old boiling water. It was right up.
Now, when you were starting to school up there at the Freedom School, did your dad still have the blacksmith shop?
He walked, he, up until the last year or two, he would go north then and take a team and shuck corn. And by furnishing his own team and wagon, he got paid more.
Okay, because that's a pretty good distance from Clarksville, or
Well,
Auburn up to Freedom area.
they stayed. They went, of course, made the trip to go, but they stayed. And,
Okay.
Yeah. So he brought home cash for the winter that way, which worked fine for 2 or 3 years, and then he got caught in a corn hiker,
Ooh.
practically killed him.
Oh, my, I'm sorry.
So he had several years that he was recuperating from that.
Did someone else take over the blacksmith business then?
I wonder. I don't know. I know quite a bit of the time when we lived there. I remember him going back and forth, coming home from the shop. But I was first grader, second grader. You don't put two and two together too well. And since he was hurt then, we moved to the cold place and he brought milk cows. So we, especially Herbert and I, milked cows and sold milk to the cheese factory in Marshall, which made a monthly check of cash. Of course, we had chickens and pigs and the cows for the milk, if we went up to Darien to the grocery, we bought things like, baking powder, of course, soap, things that we didn't grow.
But it sounds like, at least as far as food was concerned, it pretty well came off of your own property or your own farm, didn't it?
Dad planted a big garden and we had, in the fall, he made what they called a hill in the backyard. He shoveled out a place and lined it with straw, I'm sure, and threw heads of cabbage and lots of stuff in there, and then put stuff on top of it and covered it up. And in like January, he'd open up the hill and there was cabbage. What we didn't use, of course, the pigs were very delighted to have, And we took care of ourselves. We didn't eat fancy. You didn't run and buy ready-made stuff to eat. Our poor mother, she must have really worked hard to keep everybody fed.
Did she make her own butter?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
We churned butter.
Did you do your butchering for the most of the meats and stuff?
Every fall, as soon as it got cold, yes. Butchering was part of the job.
Process. Was there a particular meat that you liked or say didn't like?
Oh, I don't think we were very choosy. I do remember her frying down sausage. I have a big pottery jar out there about this tall. It's brown and glazed. And she would fry sausage and encase it with lard.
Probably.
In that jar and fill it full of fried sausage packed in lard, That was one way to keep it.
You didn't open the refrigerator and put it in either, did you?
Well, no freezer or nothing like that. And one time, speaking of big amounts of food, the pasture for our cows was 100 acres.
Oh, pretty good size.
And in the middle of it was a great big blackberry patch.
Boy, that's good.
So one Sunday morning when I got up, Mom said, I guess you need to come and look in my pantry. So she leads me to the pantry, and it's a good-sized room. And in the floor was as many as 8 or 9 of the biggest pans and containers and buckets that she had. And he had gone up to that blackberry patch at daylight and picked berries until he had the whole pantry floor full of big containers of great big blackberries. And she said, and here it is Sunday. So that poor woman, she had to work, and she put them in half-gallon cans.
Did she make them into...
Just heated them and canned them.
Okay, didn't make jelly or...
Well, then her big deal was just getting those taken care of before they spoiled, because it was hot weather.
Yeah.
You know. But I'll never forget how that floor looked, covered with...
Did you manage to put a few of them away without getting canned? Did you eat them right out of the bowl?
We probably did. Right then. If you ate my mother's biscuits with fresh blackberries on them, great thing.
Oh my, it sounds marvelous. And maybe just tell a little bit about your your kitchen. I'm sure it was probably a coal or a wood stove.
Great big range. Mm-hmm. A great big range. Mm-hmm.
Did it have a reservoir on one end for some hot water to heat the water?
Mm-hmm. The first job you had when you came home from school, you carried in water, buckets of water, and you carried in wood. That was just a given. That was habit.
And that water didn't come out of a faucet either, did it?
It worked fine until the zero weather came. One time we had the stuff freeze in the kitchen, zero weather, so a fire had to be built, and the tea kettle heated to boiling, so you could carry the hot water out and fill the pump outside with the hot water.
Did you have to pump water for any of the livestock also?
Yeah. I'm trying to think about the big pasture. I wonder if there could have been a branch. I think there was, where the cows could do some drinking.
Okay. You didn't have a windmill then to run the pump?
No. But it seems like there was I think there was.
Because those cows can drink a lot of water.
Yeah, I think there was a branch that they could go to.
Well, you mentioned bringing that wood in. What were some of the other chores you had to do around the house?
Well, by the time you did water and wood and milk the cows, that pretty well took up the...
The day was gone.
Yeah.
Well, let's go over to, you were mentioned going to the Freedom School. Is there anything in particular that you remember about that school?
We didn't have enough desks.
Oh, really?
And a girl and I, the same age, had to sit at a desk together. And the whole desk was not a big one. And we squabbled constantly who was using the big half of that. Yeah.
Just like kids do.
We really didn't have what we needed. Looking back,
Was it that way all year or just a temporary thing?
it was maybe 2 or 3 years.
Oh, my.
Yeah, yeah. And people carried their lunch in a bucket of some kind, and it was a rather primitive thing, but we learned.
In a one-room school like that, did you feel you learned a lot from the older kids that maybe were saying their lessons and
Absolutely.
stuff?
What time you were busy, you sat there and listened. And yes,
You just learned it because they were saying it.
well, sure.
You had I'll bet you a fancy furnace in that one-room school too, didn't you?
Everything was an old stand in the middle of the floor.
But at least it kept you warm.
Well, more or less, I guess. People didn't worry about being warm then. They just worried about not freezing to death.
That's a good way to put it. What about recess and when you had time off? What did the kids do?
Pounded on each other. And, of course, there was handy over.
Oh,
The
yeah.
boys throw the ball over the roof, and in the winter we had the snow, and there was fox and goose rings,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
Were there anything like swings or teeter-totters
No.
in the bathroom?
No.
Okay. So you had to do your own entertainment.
Yeah.
So did your folks then move from that area or going on to school? Did you go several years at Freedom?
I must have been there 2 or 3 years. We went to the big place where we had the cows then, and we went to Fairview.
Fairview?
Let's see. I think 2 years at Fairview, and then we went over to Frank Finkbeiner place, and from there we went to Cottonwood.
Okay.
I think I was at Cottonwood like 5 or 6 years. Maybe 4 years. And graduated 8th grade from Cottonwood. And now it's, of course, used for somebody lives there. Buell Millis was our
Oh, yeah, I knew him.
teacher. Yeah, you know who that was. Elwood taught at American, and Buell then became a school teacher. And I think we were his first school because he was just a kid. And he'd get out and play with us, He fit right in. He was a good teacher. But then we lived across the road and about half a mile, west of Rocky Hollow.
Okay.
You ever heard of Rocky Hollow?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as the weather got spring-like, we started fussing at Buell. We wanted to go to Rocky Hollow. So he'd string down there with us maybe once a month. Maybe we made 3 trips in the spring. Down there among the rattlesnakes and all that stuff.
Well, I have a farm that backs up to Rocky Hollow.
Well, then you
So
know
it's part of it.
You know the
I sure do.
rattlesnakes, and because they are really still are thick down there.
There are.
I suppose when they heard all those kids coming, they hid.
What a contrast from what today is with all of the cautions and protections and all that stuff.
I remember the boys throwing rocks at one that was up the bank and spread out in the sun, you know, and Herbert and the big boys were throwing rocks up there at it. See who could hit it with a rock.
Oh my gosh. They must have survived okay. Oh dear.
George Floon lived on the way to the rocks, and he had lost his wife and maybe 2 children. Maybe in the flu epidemic, World War, you know, there was an epidemic, flu, and they were buried out in his front yard.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He had evergreens and stuff out there.
What was his name?
George Floon.
I've heard my dad mention that name.
Yeah. But, of course, he was elderly then. But evidently his whole family had died from an illness, and I think it was that wartime flu.
Oh boy. So you have some really funny and vivid memories of those early years, it sounds like, and sounds like some interesting times. But I'll bet you would say today, I wouldn't really care to go back to that either, would you?
Well, you wonder. No, you don't. It was because they were the disposition they were. I started to say you wonder how the teachers brought the kids up to standard, but they were devoted enough and interested enough in each kid as he was.
My mother taught for 35 years grade school, and she really relished the one-room school years that she had. And the last few years were at the Martinsville Consolidated Schools out in the country, and she loved that 3rd and 4th grade range. But it was a totally different atmosphere then, I would agree.
Well, they had to take into account the differences in kids and figure out how they were going to approach that kid and get him to do what he had to do. It had to be more of a personal endeavor.
A lot more one-on-one, I think, than what it is today. Even in spite of all the technology and stuff.
And people were surely dedicated to take the job on.
You mentioned graduating from Cottonwood. What happened after that?
Oh, I just went out doing where people were needing somebody to help. I did an awful lot of little nursing chores around over the neighborhood. I'd have to name a half a dozen. And when I was 16 or 17, a lady came she'd been a maid in Mrs. Merkel's home for several years, and she wanted to get married. And she wondered if I'd want to be a maid in the Merkel house. Merkel's had the broom factory at Paris.
Mm-hmm.
So I was up there quite a while, then decided I was missing out too much at high school. So I enrolled at high school and took a job in the drugstore lunchroom and worked at that quite a while.
Was that in Paris?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you remember what the name of the drugstore was?
No, I don't.
There used to be, I think, 4 or 5 up there.
It was southeast of the courthouse.
Okay.
They served lunch. Well, then after that, Sister March married Johnny Snedeker, and he took work at the ordnance plant at LaPorte, Indiana. And first thing we knew, she was expecting Teddy. So we were worried about her being so far away and expecting. So I went up there and got a job and lived in that town for a while.
What was the town? I know there's some different
LaPorte.
ordnance plants. Newport?
LaPorte.
LaPorte?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you did go pretty far away from home then.
Mm-hmm. And was there when Pearl Harbor happened.
Oh, gee.
Today's Pearl Harbor Day.
Mm-hmm. It is.
The place I was working did business with Japan. I went home on Friday, expecting to go back Monday and go to work, and when I got to the factory, there was a note on the door, closed indefinitely. So by that time, Teddy was born, and Johnny had had an accident and was unable to work, but they took him in the Navy. So March moved home to Snedeker's house, and Dad wouldn't let me go back. He said, the first place they'll bomb will be that ordnance plant.
That was probably good caution. But they're with the job, huh?
Yeah. So Mrs. Snedeker, Johnny's mother, said, well, there's a new man come to Marshall to open a dime store. Go down there and apply for a job.
What was the name of that man?
Pars Variety.
Pars?
Pars Variety.
Okay.
East side of the square.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew who that was. Matter of fact, you're talking about that in World War II. That would have been the time. I remember going into that little grocery or that dime store, we called it,
Yeah.
and I loved to get their candies, penny candies and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I forgot the name of it.
So, of course, Mr. White was the manager.
And his first name was?
Floyd.
Floyd.
Floyd,
Okay.
yeah.
You got to know him pretty well then, huh?
I guess. applied for a job that lasted 30-some years.
Oh, did it?
This Pearl Harbor thing, George Hudson, my sister Marie married Hudson, Frank Hudson. Frank belonged to a big family. It was as big as ours. And the youngest one was George. And in fact, he dated March some when they were both single. But time went on, and he was drafted. And they made him a cook. And he was at Pearl Harbor on one of there were quite a few ships there at the time, not just the one, the biggest one, Arizona, but there were others too. And he was a cook. So he was there when the Arizona was destroyed. And there was another smaller ship destroyed too. I forget the name of it. But anyway, he brought it up. He died a month ago. But he brought it up maybe last year, December 7th. And you could tell he was just overwhelmed at how horrible it was, you know.
It had to be an emotional thing that you'd carry with you.
Yeah, still after, you know.
All those years.
It never died. It was still a shocking, horrible, terrible experience for him to even speak of it. And some of the younger relatives said to me, well, he never talked to us about the war much.
I think that's probably true.
Well, he knew
I had an uncle that would just simply not talk about it at all.
Well, it was just, it's so overwhelming. People, you couldn't describe it to somebody that didn't experience it. But it just overwhelmed him. And there was another smaller ship destroyed at the same time. I can't think what its name was.
I have been to the monument too, and I can't think of it either. But
there were
a lot of them were damaged too.
1,400 people on that Arizona, and they Japanese just bombed the devil out of it, just destroyed it. They were so terrible.
So you worked for, you mentioned Pars Variety, and you worked there how long? 30? You said 30-some years?
No, it closed.
Did you work for the Caldwell family that had the variety store? I don't know if they bought it from the Pars or not.
No, Caldwells were not connected with it.
Okay.
She said 30-some years she married Uncle Floyd.
Okay.
How long were you married to Uncle Floyd?
Well, that's a good question. 30-some years.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. But the store had closed. Caldwell's came and wanted to buy it, and they said if we didn't sell, they'd put us out of business.
Oh, dear.
Did you live up over stairs in that place?
Part of the time.
That's what I thought. Mm-hmm. Kenny remembers going to visit you on Sunday afternoons, and he said you would take him downstairs and let him have his pick at some candy, and his favorite was orange slices.
I remember those.
Yeah, we had Teddy.
My grandfather liked that. Was his favorite.
Had Kenny. So
At that time, do you kind of remember some of the things that were around the square, the businesses and all, or
well, of course,
operation then?
I had a baby to take care of by then, and I think if you've got a kid underfoot, other things don't make that much impression. Long after the war, Floyd had been a entertainer, part of a group they called Rhythm Ramblers. And they met once a year for a reunion. So one of those guys had been, well, he was at Pearl Harbor on a little boat, and a lot of the stuff that was shipped to people was shipped in good-sized wooden boxes, sturdy boxes. Some of them were big enough that they could even put a pallet in there and sleep in if they needed to. But he was out on deck, and a big box was out there with him some way. And he saw a little Japanese plane coming. So he gets on this side of the box. And the Japanese has a machine gun. And he said, he turned that gun on and it just stitched down across the deck like a sewing machine going through fabric, and it went away, and he came out relieved and happened to look, and the guy was coming back.
Gee.
He said, I didn't waste any time getting around on the other side of that box. He said, all at once that war got real close and personal.
I think so. He must have really had a guardian angel sitting on his shoulder.
He thought maybe the guy ran out of ammunition was the reason he left that time. But that guy was really after him.
Wow.
That book is written by a gal 3 houses down on the east side of the street. She's dead now. But she wrote a little book and had copies at her yard sale. So I was over there, and being a good neighbor, I bought an issue of her book, and now I'm glad I did because she died. And
well, you're living up over that variety store. You had a view of everything basically that was happening in Marshall. And at that time,
yeah, we'd look out the...
I know Archer Avenue, that's where the route was, all the traffic and everything up down there. You remember the cars being parked in the middle of the street?
Yeah.
I mean, that street's wide, but it doesn't seem like it's that wide.
Yeah, I think they did. And we had parking meters, which made everybody mad. And there were quite a few cars, because as soon as the war was over, everybody was tired of being restricted. They wanted to rush out and buy a house, buy a car. Everything that they hadn't had during the war. People went in debt and everything in order to acquire those things that they'd been barred from having during the war, You
mentioned when we were talking earlier about things called brick streets and brick highways.
Yeah.
Most people now, even though they may be there, the streets in Marshall are still brick, but they're paved over with asphalt and blacktop. What do you remember about those brick highways?
not much. I wasn't out on the highway.
You mentioned the fact
I
that,
went on a bus if I went any place.
but you mentioned that one side was bricked and the other side was
Yeah,
gravel.
to Terre Haute, well, there was one lane.
Okay.
Yep.
And Route 1, what was on it?
Well, it was brick.
It was brick.
My cousin's husband was 12 or 13 years old, and they had a farm between Annapolis and Route 1. He told her after they were married that he plowed with the team in order to help get the crop in because Dad had a paying job laying brick for the Route 1.
Okay, now that would have been, his name was Amaker, right? Or not? What was his first name? I want to say years ago I met an older gentleman named Amaker, and he told me about laying bricks and how many the quota and how many bricks they could lay
That
and putting
man's
that road
name
down.
was not Amaker, it was...
Well, I didn't mean to sidetrack, but
Well, now see, this is something that makes me frantic. I'll be digging for a name and it won't come up.
welcome to the club.
Well, what was...
I don't know. I can't answer you.
Dad farmed between Annapolis and Route 1 on the north side. He had 80 acres there. Well, darn, in the middle of the night, I'll
Yeah, I was
think
going
of
to say that's something you can think about
Yeah.
tonight. From your variety store days, where did you move to from there? Did you stay in?
Where do
did
we
you
go
stay in
after the
Marshall?
variety store? Floyd went to Montgomery Ward at Paris
Oh, okay.
and managed the hardware department.
Okay.
And he worked up there until the doctor told him to get outdoors. And then he started working for Johnny Snedeker. No, he managed the hardware department up there.
Okay.
I don't know how many years, quite a few.
Did you live in Paris then at that time?
We lived at Clarksville and let's see, then we moved to Beach Street in Marshall, built a little house, 1208 Beach, and lived there. Then we went to Blizzard Ford. We had 2 boys, and there, I'll tell you, that was heaven on earth. Those
Back out of
boys
Blizzard
and me, we just had great fun out there.
Yeah, I used to swim out there.
Oh, that was, in spite of the snakes and all that, big rattlesnakes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great time.
Bonnie, with all those places that you've mentioned that you have lived, what brought you to Casey?
Well, we bought a big house in Annapolis and lived there, and Floyd died there. And Arbogast was my lawyer. I took care of my dad's affairs at his final years. and Arbogast was my lawyer. So
I think his name was Zolly.
Zolly.
Sure knew, yeah, I knew him.
So he helped me settle up Floyd's estate, and Ronnie Hudson, my sister Marie's Ronnie, worked in the bank when I was taking care of Dad's affairs. He helped me invest money from the Dad's sale and things to bring in a little interest till it had to be used. And so we had worked together on that thing. So I kept my banking affairs with him.
Okay.
He's retired now, and of course Zolly's dead.
Yeah.
But the two things indicated that it made sense to live here.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're aware of it, but property in Casey is like 20% cheaper than property in Marshall.
You're right.
The same deal. And the only difference is the courthouse. And I don't go to the courthouse only maybe once in 2 or 3
You
years.
can live very well without it, can't you?
So, yeah.
Even though they do take
Yeah.
your taxes.
Yeah. So this place came up for sale. A widow had lived here and died. And I bought it from her children.
You're nice, close, convenient to town and things around too.
When there was a red and white grocery at the corner here, and of course here's the bank, Zolly, the library, anything. And at that time there were a Sears Roebuck store. You could order anything you wanted. There was a furniture store, a going furniture store, and anything you want to mention was right here.
It seems like in the last 15, especially 15 or 20 years, all small towns have just been saturated with the Walmarts and things that big businesses are
Started
not
going
there.
out toward Route 70, and it cheated downtown.
And that's not just Casey. That's happened every place.
Yeah, really.
Unfortunately.
And this place down here on the corner moved out there. And I understand this corner's going to be used to restore rare antique cars.
Oh, boy.
I wish it had stayed while it was. It was so handy.
With this has been just a delight visiting with you, Bonnie. And you filled in so many things that I kind of remember a few of them, but not all of them. And it's fine. It's so many people that you mentioned too.
Yes.
I do, and that helps keep it interesting. There's a couple questions that I usually just ask about everyone. Number one is we've all got these modern conveniences and things around us. Is there one of those things or a couple of them you say, I just couldn't live without that?
Well, electricity, of course.
That runs about everything, doesn't it?
We had a cute happening when Dad was still recuperating, but he was building a new house for our oldest sister, Claude Hurst, and her. And Herbert was plowing with a riding plow out in the field so Dad could work and earn money. And he came running to the house with his cap full. Mom, have we got an old hen that wants to set? And of course, we usually had one.
Yeah.
He started to plow up a prairie chicken's nest. He saw the hen fly off. And she'd been sitting there to hatch a whole bunch of eggs. So they put him under that hen, and she hatched him. And she was a big old lazy placid Plymouth Rock. Big. Those little prairie chickens, they were born running. I think there were maybe almost 30 of them.
Oh, my.
A whole bunch. So she just practically had a nervous breakdown trying to keep up with those lively little... And, of course, they grew up, and for 2 or 3 years, every once in a while, a flock would come and eat with our chickens. Come and eat a while, go away. And we always felt like they came back
to where they started
to eat.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that was a bright spot. We kind of watched for them.
Did you have a pet when you were growing up?
Mm-mm.
No. And I don't see any cats or anything around here now today either. Well, Marie, you had, of course, I usually ask this question about Marshall, but I'll phrase it about Clark County. If you were traveling and ended up somewhere in another part of the country, and you said, I'm from Clark County, Illinois, and someone said, where is that?
Clark
What's that all
County.
about? What would you tell them about our county or Marshall or Casey?
Well, I think it's pretty well in the middle of nowhere. When I was talking to Ted about cities being bombed, I said, you know, there's some advantages in living out to the edge of nowhere.
Right.
Nothing out here is important enough to bomb.
But it's a pretty nice place to call home, though, too, isn't it? Now, Bonnie, I've done a lot of talking here, too, and I know you have, but is there something that you would like to tell us about that you have not covered before? It's been a very, very, very interesting, and I think you've covered some real points of things in the past that is nice to have on tape or on documentation.
I think at the present time, I am very grateful for when I'm out buying gas or buying groceries. People are so considerate, like at the grocery store. A little boy came and said, I'll help you get those groceries in the car, ma'am.
That's great.
You know? Or one time a middle-aged, well, in her 30s lady said, hey, I'll help you get those groceries in the car. When I came home, here's her car coming down the road. She said, I thought I'd help you get your groceries in the house.
That's great.
I didn't know her. But wasn't that considerate?
And I think that's a little bit more of the small town friendliness that you don't find in bigger cities.
But little things like that, you really appreciate.
Oh yeah, it means so much. I assume you hire someone to mow your yard and take care of things
Yes,
like
I
that.
hire a
Do you-
man to.
Do you have any trouble finding someone that you can depend on to do that?
He came and applied for me to have. There was in that first house when I first came, I had a mower. I started working for Green Thumb.
Oh yeah.
It was going to be working at Martinsville Library, and my mower went bad. And I made it a matter of prayer. I really was stumped. I didn't know exactly what to do. An older man had lived over here. A younger man bought the place, and guess what his business was? Mowing lawns.
Wonderful.
So for years, right here, a couple of years ago, he had to give up the ghost, and another man from down the street came to the door and said he decided he was going to mow 3 or 4 yards, and did I want him to mow mine. So this year he mowed it. I fancy the time's awfully close where I'm going to have to live a little different.
Well, I know even in Marshall, and I'm sure it's the same here, to get someone to do just minor repairs, mowing and things like that, it's not an easy thing to do.
Well, this is what I can depend on this guy over here to do. So long as he was here, I'd say, I need, done. Well, I can't do it today, but maybe I can get to it tomorrow, And I was happy to pay him. It's just little things that I couldn't quite get done. And after he left, I was up a tree a lot of time.
Well, as you said, that prayer may help a lot too. And maybe you didn't want to mention it, and if you don't, that's fine. But Bonnie, you didn't mention what year you were born, and that doesn't.
21. 21.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, some people are sensitive about their age, and I didn't want to press that.
Well, I've got old enough now I can brag about it.
Well, sure.
In your 80s, you're sensitive. After you get to be 90, you start bragging about it. Don't you think you do, Sue?
Well,
You might tell him how many brothers and sisters you had, and how many children, Aunt Bonnie.
Oh, well, I had 9 brothers and sisters.
Ooh, I didn't realize that many.
I'm the
Okay.
7th child of a 7th child. Does that give you a Kabbalistic
Yeah.
gift of some kind? And my husband had 8 brothers and sisters.
Oh, man.
Big families were more
Oh, yeah.
style.
In my dad's family, there were 7 boys and 1 girl.
Oh, one girl.
And you see, you had 9
I
in
had
the
9
family.
brothers and sisters.
And how about your family? How many children did you have?
Three boys.
3 boys, okay. Well, Bonnie, I want to say I've enjoyed this so much.
Well,
I really appreciate you taking the day out and the time to do
I
this.
hope somebody will get some good out of
We
it.
really appreciate it, because you've done exactly what we're looking for people to do, is just simply tell their story. And
Yeah.
you've done very well doing that.
Yeah. It's a long story.
You've lived a long